The mushroom is a toxin that has a chemistry, norbobiocystin, others like that, psilocin, that is very similar to, but different than the neurotransmitter. Just like 5-alpha dimethyltryptamine, smoking it in a glass pipe and getting high, is different than N hyphen dimethyltryptamine that Rick Strassman and others studied. Now, it is the neurotransmitter that gives you the LSD-like high, not LSD. LSD, when you take it, is broken down into salts and in the urine within 40 minutes of ingestion. And it is the neurotransmitters that create the high. Now, the high is an altered state of consciousness. And it is altered states that allow you access to those so-called gifts that you know you have, but you can't get there from here. And what system do you know right now where you can control your altered state? Hypnosis. And that's why the first book was ESP induction through forms of self-hypnosis. There's a protocol that when you go into an altered state, and you're not where you are right here, but you're just right about here, your ability in guessing increases 400 times over where you are right now. And if you go over here, you can have the strength like methamphetamine. I watched a woman rip a car door off to save her daughter in a flaming automobile. Oh, that's adrenaline. Well, wait a minute. Adrenaline didn't make her bone and her muscle stronger than steel. How did she do that? It was her belief system of just ripping the door off. It was in her mind's eye. And once you understand how to do that, now you have access to subtle bodies outside the physical. The example that I will use was when Cassius Clay hit Sonny Liston with that big roundhouse bang, and Sonny Liston went up on his back and out flat out cold. On closer inspection, you'll note that Cassius Clay didn't touch Sonny Liston. And that's what Sifus call chi, where they go, whoa! And you knock someone across the room just with your thought. It isn't thought. There's a series of subtle bodies, one of which is microtubules just outside. That's how we did acupuncture. You stab yourself in the left arm, and you have a response on the right arm. There's no known circulatory system except chi that describes that in the Nei Ching. And that's why the UW was studying that even before Hameroff was out of diapers. And I can tell you, there's more going on here. Now that's electrometric. Yogatronics is me. This is 82 that I wrote that. Is me as a little boy on Mars creating my own wormhole. I didn't need CERN. How does that work? That's called resonant cavity oscillators, where you take sacred geometry and you meditate on it, and it sets up resonances in the brain that releases specific neurotransmitters that allows you access to these other bodies. And that's the next series I'm writing on the diamond body.
Well, you and I talked about this. You and I talked about this, about how you were going to articulate how to create your own wormhole at will. So
that's by taking certain geometries and focusing on holding them in meditation for some period of time in your mind's eye. And that's why it's hard to do that, because your brain doesn't want to do that. And so what it does is it constantly throwing shifts in, and that's what's called training your mind. Hold, and you come back, you be mindful. That's a good word, mindful. You keep bringing your attention back, you keep bringing it back, because the repetitiveness adds up. to fullness. And that's part of the psionic field theory that I'm writing right now with two Russians. And this theory will use a form of Kaufman's virtual knot theory. Knot theory is where you take strings and you tie various forms of knots. And even back in the early 1900s, we had unbelievable amount of knots as Boy Scouts, as tying little knots and things like that. It's all in metaphor. And that's where man's destiny lies. And the next set of books, I have two more books coming out besides the diamond body stuff. I have The New Small Family Farm for the 21st Century. And one of the chapters...
Which I have a copy of, by the way.
What's that? Yes, well,
I have a
one
copy
of the chapters is what I am proposing for you to grow hemp as a virgin white paper. New subject, the magical and ritual use of metaphor, archetypal gods in daily living. What that is a book on tarot that allows you to understand the storyboards that you're currently playing inside yourself. Everybody's either possessed, one storyboard, or complex, more than one. Most of us, like you or me, might have 5 to 7 different primary stories going on. Psyche at the Well of Souls, da-da-da-da-do, Persephone, taking drugs, have to go back to Hades once a year, that kind of thing. Once you understand the myth that you're following, each one has an ending. And if you don't like that ending, you change the movie. And that's called pathworking. And I now have, from my past, 10, count them, 10 books on the holistic Kabbalah on how to change the movie, starting with the physical plane, emotional plane, intellectual plane, right on up to Doth, which, by the way, is a real place. Doth is the only place above Tippereth, your Christ consciousness at the throat, Doth. That place is where knowledge becomes wisdom, because knowledge is illusion except in that one moment. And that is like a roaring stream, and I, looking at you, say, au revoir, and I leap with, like the Joker, out into the middle of the roaring stream, knowing that there's a rock under the water near the surface that I lightly step on and leap over to the other side laughing. It's a temporary place. You can't hang out there. You just boop to do, and that's where knowledge, the only place where knowledge becomes wisdom, on path 13, on your path toward God or union with God. There's union with self, having full disclosure, and then union with God, where you merge with, like in Dreamscape, the big whirlpool and your little dot of light that joins in, and that place.
Well, let's talk about something else. I mean, one of the things that you and I discussed off camera here is you're recovering some of your lost memories. What can you share about this? I mean, that you're comfortable sharing. I know there's some stuff that's highly sensitive, both from a national security point of view as well as your own point of view. But what can you tell us? Tell us more about this Krill who you were introduced to, who was inside your mind.
It's I can't articulate it. I don't have the vocabulary.
Do your best.
It's new discovery. I was involved in some serious stuff back then, apparently, and have or forgotten it for one reason or several others. I don't know, like slipping drugs, a line of cocaine, whatever. I watched The Queen of the South, and one of my best friends is in that movie. I mean, I know that I'm lucky. Woodrow
as an actor or as a character?
Well, the writing on some of that, I know those people. I knew she was called the Dragon Lady that did Pink Pearl. You remember those days, Michael? No, you're too young. But I was there and saw it, just like I was on the magic bus with down, the Coast Highway, dealing with the Hells Angels. They all really loved me because I had all this martial arts, but I was an intellect. I'm not a spook. I'm a nerd, And I can tell you, my martial arts, by the way, was that I was 4 years old in the Philippines and was stuck in Buddhist missionary school, Shaolin, because my mom was into a China theater doing Kodak. And they sent me there until I was almost 8. I came back into the United States. I didn't even read English until 4th grade. And so, and I was Caucasian, wrong. So I remember I was in this room with SEAL Team 1, and we're all sitting around looking at each other. And I turned the light out, and I said, "Last man standing." And what happened is I hear them knocking each other down. And then the last guy came over looking for me, and I was already on my back, because that's how I learned how to fight, was on my back with hordes of Filipinos on top of me, because I was Caucasian. In proper retrospect, I should also mention I learned how to play chess in the streets also. And so bullying and that kind of events that are happening now again in high school is so seriously wrong. There are so many different, it's people being insecure. Your bully is usually the biggest person in the crowd that's fearful. And once you understand that, I remember the first day of my high school, this is a true story. I went to Mount Rainier High, I'd come from Chinook Junior High. I was going in my first day of high school at Mount Rainier High School out in Des Moines. And I was a freshman. And it was third period in PE. That means first and second period had already left the area wet, in the shower room. And the bully, who was twice my size, came over, "Oh, you're a blah, blah, blah." And I just looked at him, and he tried to get me in a fight. And I knew I couldn't take him, so I'm not going to fight this man. And he hit me in the face. And he started laughing at me because I wouldn't do anything. When he turned his head, I picked up a baseball bat and I broke his head open, and I was expelled the first day of high school. 2 weeks later, when he got out of the hospital and I was back in school, he got me out in the parking lot where they park cars, and he lifted me with one hand. He was going to do me. And I just looked at him and said, "You better do a good job because I'll get you again." And from that moment on, I was always respected, never hassled. He became a close friend. And later wasn't so much a bully or insecure. In fact, what he did was become a wrestling coach for another high school later in his life. It was kind of cool. He became a cool person. Bullying is, it was really nice. I never had to go through all of that. Even though I was a jock, I didn't have to have sex with cheerleaders. I was a virgin when I went to school. I was afraid I'd get someone pregnant and I couldn't go to school, college. Back then, they didn't have contraceptives and, things like that. So it was interesting life that I've had. The memories are mostly, I did them, I forgot about them, moved forward, integrated them, became something else. And then when, in retrospect, with dreams or something, I'll kind of remember things. And what I'm actually doing is changing them a little bit. I don't know how to explain that, but time travel is when you write something in a journal, that moment, and then 20 years later, like a dream, you go back and you read what you wrote 20 years ago. What that does is it puts the brain back into a hologram. It's very similar to the moment when you wrote that. It isn't quite the same. And that's why there's confabulation and all the rest of this, icky stuff that comes in where you change the storyboard a little bit to fit how you want it to be rather than the way it was. And or which one came first? Was the earth round or flat? And that's what the multiverse is about. All the different choices at any given moment that you have to become this moment. And once you understand that, a level of empowerment occurs where now you have a rudder. Oh, that's Julie. There's a, to steer your boat more clearly through troubled waters. Oh, another, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and troubled waters. I have been there, done that, and now I'm just old and smell bad, and I wanna try to leave some footprints of some realizations. I'm a satsangi. I meditate every day.
Well, what three realizations would you like to share with the listeners out here, the audience, that you've come across so far? Well, what are your three biggest realizations that you've had as an individual that you'd like to share?
Well, the first one I told you earlier, you gotta be very careful for the thoughts you choose to entertain, because that is what determines reality. If you think, I can't do it, and you're saying it, you're reinforcing the fact that you can't do it, you can't. But if you don't say it, yep, so you're not reinforcing yourself. For example, then you start to be able to take control of the dream that you're in. And that's where the lucid dreaming part comes in, where you're directing the material world in your favor, the way you want to use it. And each one of us is different. And what's left for you might be right for me, or Malcoma in the middle, somewhere in there. Oops. I'm of two minds of this, and they call it heads or tails. And do you realize how many altered states you have personally gone in this interview in the last, how long have we been doing this? 1 hour?
Almost an hour, yes. Almost
boom,
an hour.
just like that, boom. And that's how quickly, how many altered states. And if you started to direct those things with intent.
Well, point well taken, and I will discipline myself on when I say can't. I will direct discipline.
Well, it's just a beginning start point for you. Everybody's different. And the reason you choose a group, clique, church, whatever, is to find people with similar values to help you toward what you're trying to become. You're not perfect. We all make mistakes. Oops, 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 oops. It's trying to find the track in the center of the line rather than ricocheting off the walls and creating karma. I have in my book this one drawing I did, and it's this little guy sitting here pushing a domino that goes click, 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 and it's called the domino. It's called the butterfly effect. The small wing here has tremendous storms over here. You can't see the domino that's about to fall on him from pushing this domino. Each one has consequences, and choice is what made us God's favored. The uniqueness of that, I think that man is kind of like David Copperfield to the alien. Can I have something more, please? I'm still hungry. I'd like a little more, please. And we're being held back, and some of us want to break out to the other side. Oh, that's break out to the other side. Jim Morrison. That's, I don't know if you can see this or not. I'm going to show you something here. I don't know if this works. I'm going to try. Yeah. You see that picture on the wall there?
Yes.
That picture was Grandfather Joseph, the medicine man that died at the crossroads when Jim Morrison was 10 years old. There are entities on this earth that are not human. What does that mean? The Dalai Lama, as a little child, so nice to see you again after so long a period, Kundan. No, I didn't wear that hat, I wore that hat. How does someone have genetic memory? Denzel Washington did a movie on that about a demon that when the individual died, that part of the consciousness became a ride-on move to the next individual. That's what
Talking about Fallen, when he was chasing the demon Azazel.
That's correct. This
all
is
the
grandfather.
Touch the next person and take over their consciousness, and touch one to the next, the next. The people never knew he was there.
But grandfather Mantuanga didn't take over your consciousness. It was a ride along that Jim Morrison, in 1968, when I saw him at Gold Creek Park, singing about that. I didn't believe it. They said he died, in Paris, but he was smuggled out of Paris by the Swedish Secret Service, and one of the projects I did for MRU was to actually vet a fat Jim Morrison, still alive, working for a laser company in Louisiana. And I have that letterhead that will be in Spook Central book, showing CIA letterhead of Jim Morrison writing to me and me vetting that. And you can read about that in a very interesting book from Feral Press called Secret and Suppressed. And Michael James Reconasuccio is in there also. That's Captain Crunch. And some of those guys were friends of mine out of Tacoma. I am amazed at how many different things have happened in this single lifetime of mine. And someone is now doing a biography. That Weebly thing has some pictures that actually show you with my linear accelerator. That link there talks about the work I did with NASA and stuff when I was 15. I got recruited by old man DuPont when I did that field theory on Meson field theory. That was Yukawa that got the Nobel Prize, and I was writing code for NASA at that time. And then I built that accelerator that then was later used on the Mariner 4. And when I went to college at Pullman, man, it was so cool. I did an undergraduate thesis. I spent one summer in the basement learning how to make using a Bridgeport mill. I made the first plasma jet. And when I turned it on, the whole campus went, in power. Everybody thought I was going to blow up the campus. And I created a light about 16 inches that was 60 times hotter than the surface of the sun. And then I started putting magnetic fields on it and started twisting it around, tying it into itself where it wouldn't mix with itself because of the sheath on the plasma. And that's where I first got the idea of string theory and knot theory, where you can take strings and tie them into knots, leading to psionic field theory, which is what I hope to take me to Stockholm this time. And if it does, my bucket list includes opening for Saturday Night Live. What would you like to do as my friend? You're welcome to come along, write your own skit, man. We could have some real fun with this, twist everybody's mind.
I remember you first tried to talk to me about knot theory maybe 3-4 years ago at your house up there in Grants Pass, and I remember quite well because I was all ears listening. But sometimes I have to ask you to talk real slow.
Oh, that's well, slowly. Yeah, I know that song. Okay. I'm sorry about that.
We've got one of your life lessons, and that is to discipline your mind and watch what you think, control your thoughts. What are the other two? Give us two more.
Well, you actually, gosh, where do I begin with all of this? That's another story for another time. But you better buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
All right, so I have to hand you back to the other two.
I'm sorry?
I have to invite you back for another interview to get the other two.
There's lots more where that came from. What do you want to talk about? Just talking about the idea of the mind's eye and what it is interesting because the mind is outside the physical body.
Most people think that the mind and the brain are synonymous.
They're not.
Mind and the brain are very different. They're separate.
And you can't get there from here because basically time and space aren't real, which means we're not going to be able to use quantum mechanics. Basically, Heisenberg suggested that when you take an analog system and you digitize it, you incur an uncertainty principle in that the more you know about one thing, the less you know about the other.
About everything else, yes.
Okay, well, that also applies to fractals and the idea of using generators like Mandelbrot, Julia, and May. They're unique systems that are separated from one another. They're not analog, which means the holographic systems have limitations. And what we're trying to do is come up with a field theory that allows us closer access to multi-worlds where we can understand what a child is and is not in retrospect to ourselves.
That gives me a good segue here. Why don't we switch topics and start talking a little bit about Antarctica? What can you share with us about what's the reality down there?
Antarctica. That wasn't one of my projects. That was an anthropologist woman, and I can't find her name now, but that's she hired May as a physicist to try to explain how light worked in the cavern. When we came in through Thule Island and deployed underneath, we came into a cavern that was literally more than a mile high, and it was like light. How does that work? That was my job. That's bioluminescence. That will be a chapter in Spook Central between holographic and embryonic will be bioluminescence, and that'll be where that, and what it was an algae that was fed by bacteria, and that's where we first understood what bioluminescence was. Now, when I was there, it wasn't part of my study. I was studying the bacteria part, but I saw the Nazi base there. There was like 19 slips that looked like they had been nuked, nuclear. I don't know what happened. They were in complete disarray. And further down, there was a Viking base that was there from the 14th century. Where's that in our history books?
Don't know.
And further down was technology. There was this hole that went 100 miles straight down into the mantle. And back in the early 70s, that's impossible because that when you get down that level, you start getting into plastic and molten steel. I mean, you know, things turn into plastic. How did they maintain the frame? We had no way to go down there. I think when Buzz Aldrin and all the other people went to Antarctica and they saw something, I think what happened is they had technology that could go 100 miles down in, and they discovered something. What was it? I don't know. But my best guess is that they found something in stasis, probably Nephilim. Now, Nephilim have been discovered. I have a picture from 1812 in Pennsylvania where this guy found this huge skull he dug up in Pennsylvania, and that got stuck into the, what's that big museum?
Smithsonian.
Yeah.
They've been destroying evidence for decades.
Well, that was a thing that I did with Surratt. He wanted to interview me for BBC. They did a series on that and the Colorado River, and he wanted to know what happened to the skull. And my best guess is that the two brothers that were running the Smithsonian were sons to a Methodist minister that was dogging Joseph Smith across the country, had formed Mormonism. And what they did is they probably dumped that skull in an attempt to vet their father's validation of religion formed on Close Encounters. I don't know. Nobody will ever know what happened to that skull. My guess is it's in the Atlantic Ocean because the two brothers were trying to vet their father. He was a Methodist minister that lost his flock to this Joseph Smith that then went across the country and formed Mormons.
Mhm.
I don't know. The Colorado has caves that have a museum of artifacts in it going back from when Cleopatra went down looking for copper. And so we'll never know what really happened. It won't work like that. What is it? History is written by the winning team, or however they put that part.
Well, that is the thing. We do have a lot of hidden history that's been repressed.
That's correct. Because of one thing or another, political, Catholic Church.
It seems like the Vatican has been one of the repositories where they want to keep these artifacts and keep this information and not let it out to us. What can you share about what you know there?
Well, what I find offensive about the Catholic religion is that I need a priest to talk to God on my behalf. That's what I find offensive. I would like to have my own talk with God. I don't need a priest to do that for me.
Don't need an intermediary there, mangling your words. Yeah.
Well, it was actually Pope Innocent the First when he declared war on the Cathars, that in the year 1000, that the teachings of Christ and the Catholic Church probably parted ways. From my limited understanding, I don't know. I've done some serious, I taught 11 years at Harvard, metaphysics. They're audio books that I have, 15 courses I taught. And what I did on those courses is that I added my technical references that I did as PDFs, so you can go to my sources and come to your own conclusions. Now, when they did the Nag Hammadi and the different scrolls, Dead Sea Scrolls, a series of scrolls were discovered that would suggest that they didn't actually put Jesus on the cross, they put his brother Simon on it. There are 2 documents on that, and then they fed him a liquid to get him off the cross before he was actually dead. I don't know if those are valid or not. Those are historical documents that may or not be true, predicated, again, on what you choose to want to believe. And that, in my humble opinion, is arbitrary. So does Antarctica exist? Yes. There's a Russian video out showing Admiral Byrd being attacked by Foo Fighters. What are those? We didn't even have jets back then. And yet there they are. Technology has many faces to it. And there are breakthroughs, and the Nazis had the Bell. They had a bunch of stuff that the only reason we were lucky is that because of our atomic bomb. They were going for one as well, and we got there first. We're lucky. Actually.
Well, let's talk about the Bell for a second. This has always been something that's fascinating me. What was this thing for? It's got 2 counter-rotating spheres filled with red mercury in it. Consumed a tremendous amount of power. And what was its purpose? What was this thing supposed to have done?
Well, originally it was going to be a type of flying craft like a UFO, and the Vimana. We've seen historically in many different cultures events where they had, different kinds of spacecraft, helmets that went down for oxygen, whatever. I don't know. And my area of expertise is more in the physics, and so I try to retain that credibility as opposed to being an anthropologist or
a speculator. Yes.
Well, I speculate. I do. I just try to do it using my rules of approach, which is physics. Now that doesn't mean I'm right, because physics won't get you there either. Here we are, trying to find the center, and really, it's really about your belief systems as a tool in a toolbox. I have a whole chapter on belief systems and how to change them in my new book. And the technique is really important because now you can use your belief as a tool to move you toward what you're seeking. And each of us is seeking something a little different. And that's what made us God's favored, is the diversity of possibilities in man. Your special powers that you know you've got, but you can't access yet.
I just haven't figured out how yet. That's all. I've tried and tried, but I'm not dead yet, and I'm not stopped trying. So.
Well, then that's right. And I offer courses where I will. I had one guy take my class and then go out and win a lottery.
Well, I can use that about now.
Well, because in my humble opinion, that's a form of magic, and when you use it for personal gain, you get what you want, but not quite the way you want it. Let me give you an example. My first act of magic, I want $50,000. What happened? A truck drove over me, and I got the insurance for the hospital bills.
Yeah, that's the old story of the monkey paw.
There it is, and the 12th monkey. That's correct.
So
anything, you can call it that way. Synchronicity, nothing happens by chance. That's what synchronicity, Carl Jung, was all about, and the whole concept of imaginal psychology. So.
Okay, Rick, what other closing comments do you have here? We're getting a little long on time here, but I always enjoy talking to you. And what do you want? What else do you want to share with the audience before we say goodbye?
No, I'm looking for some help. I need some minor IT work to clean up my website at richardallenmiller.com. My bookstore has got a couple of things broken. I have some friends that are going to try to fix them, but good IT would help. I've had barbarians inside my house, not at my gates. I've actually had them inside my house. And so I don't trust anything anymore. I hate to be that way. I don't want to be that way. I'm a little kid. I want to, but what I have
fun and play.
What?
You want to have fun and play.
Yeah. What I've discovered is the bigger and blacker the bigger the car, the blacker it is. And I don't trust anything anymore. I have a team of interview people that will go, when someone wants to work with me, then they go through the gauntlet of trying to convince other people that they're good people. Julie's one of them, you're another one. You know what I'm talking about. I need someone to help me clean up my website. I need a publicist that can promote the non-local mind. I have a big shopping list. And I have patrons now that want to see all these different books I've got partially written, actually done. And I'm 77, so I figure I may have another 20 years max to get that happening. And look at what I've got done now. Encyclopedia on alternative ag is 9 volumes, So I've written a lot of books, lots more where that came from, and I've got some brand new ones that I haven't even talked about. How about this one? Norm Shealy and I did radio with a bunch of 6th graders over a 2-year period, and that title is called Children Ask the Darndest Questions. Here's a question my child asked. If pigs are so smart, how come parrots can talk and pigs can't? The kids are brilliant, they say, and how would you respond to something like that? Well, bird brain comes to mind, and when a pig wants its way, it seemingly knows how to communicate it. Squee, get out of its way like a hog. They're wonderful. That's what I enjoy doing. And so when I finish all this technical crap I've been doing, now I'm going to write some children's books. And I remember when I was in high school, I wrote a science fiction story that was somewhat like the Forbin Project, where man built this huge computer that had the sum of all of man's knowledge in it, and they turned it on, and they asked the first question, is there a God? And the computer said, there is now.
Well, Rick, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Good seeing you.
Nice seeing you, Mike.
Again soon.